everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, in this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'd be happier if we could get over the heat wave we have going over here in this part of the country. I'm not a fan. Not a fan at all.
What's it getting to over there?
I mean, we've been like every other week or so having like excessive heat warnings. So, like with the the real feel is usually sitting at like 109 degrees for like the last few weeks.
Ouch.
Man, get fucked. Oh my god, I would die. Straight up,
Yeah.
I literally would die.
It's really bad. So I work in a hospital now, y'all, for like the last 8 months. 9 months? Oh my god. Doesn't matter. Anyway, the rooms that I work in, like the highest temperature is like 70 degrees. So it's anywhere between 56 to 70 degrees in my workplace. And then I step outside and you just blast it. It's like I've entered hell. It is literally hell outside all the time.
I'm surprised you don't die from thermal shock.
Oh yeah, I have to wear like leggings and like like 2 shirts under my scrubs so that I can stay warm enough to survive being inside. And then I immediately have to like take all that off to go outside because it's just too fucking hot. It's that Katy Perry song all day every day.
I kind of picture you stumbling out of the front doors of the hospital, peeling off your clothes like, I wasn't meant to suffer like this. That's what I picture. Crawling towards your car. AC, for the love of God!
I wear like a tank top underneath a t-shirt, and then I have like scrubs over that, and then like leggings underneath my scrubs. And then, so I change out in the locker room, and then I go outside, and as soon as I get my car, I'm like, okay, this fucking t-shirt's coming off, I can't. So then I have like this really like low-cut tank top in my car, and I'm like, one day somebody's gonna knock on my window to see if I'm like stripping or something. But... I can't wait for it to not be quite so hot. You know how like everybody's like, oh, it's spooky season now because it's September 1st and that means it's already Halloween. And I'm like, it can be Halloween spooky season when it's not real feel 109 degrees outside.
The heat over here has been as bad. We've kind of been hovering at about the low to mid 80s the last week. What's really been killing us over on my part of the world is I live just on the outskirts of Baltimore, which, the quality of the air is not the best. So when you combine that with high heat, like that's what's really been making, we've had like code reds for the last like couple weeks in and around Baltimore, just because the heat combined with the air pollution, like to the point where colleges and schools are shutting down. Because it's like Towson University, where my brother goes to school, they actually canceled their student move-in day this year. Well, I shouldn't say canceled; they postponed it. Because it's not safe to breathe outside right now. So let's wait until things chill out a little bit.
We've been getting the haze from Canada, from the fires and everything. That like reaches down here, and I see it.
So it's your fault, Birdman.
Yeah, this is
problem.
your fault. Take responsibility for Canada.
That's what I do. I'm responsible for all of Canada's wrongs.
Blame
also, the export of
Canada.
maple syrup.
Blame Canada with all their hockey hullabaloo, and that bitch Anne Murray too.
Anyway, yeah, the weather all around has just been sort of awful everywhere. I don't know how the weather is in Canada. Birdman, tell me.
Death. In the last 2 weeks, I've been outside a grand total of once. Because the heat will literally kill me because I can't breathe due to my asthma, which really sucks. The heat finally broke today as of the recording, but I'm so buried in work I can't go outside even if I wanted to. In terms of temperature, the air temperature is probably about 100 something, but it's the humidity. It is above 60%. It's gone as high as 90 when it's not raining. So that is literally tropical rainforest. It is disgusting. Thankfully, I have a really nice air conditioner. And for this podcast, I turned off some of my fans so I don't die. But yeah, I am waiting for spooky season to hit us with spooky colder days. I mean, sure, if we want a preview of hell, as Cad said, we've certainly gotten that free preview now. So now back to your regularly scheduled pumpkin spice lattes, cold weather, sweaters, and people and girls dressing up strangely like Han Solo during football season. I don't get it. It's always Uggs and vests. It's really weird. Anyway. Yeah.
I still say that there is no fresher hell than having to work outside in your car all day when your car's air conditioner compressor is broken and will not blow cold air whatsoever. That was my life for a couple years when I was delivering pizzas.
Nope. Straight up. Nope.
Man. So my last job, I worked in warehouses. One of our warehouses had heat and air and the other one didn't. So we would be inside of a warehouse. If it was 90 degrees outside, it was 90 degrees inside unless you were next to the boiler. And then it was like 10 to 15 degrees hotter. So we'd be like, no air conditioning, running up and down ladders and like moving around heavy shit and doing like, you'd be like the day that I drank like 12 water bottles was the day I was like, okay, I need a much bigger water bottle. Like it was so bad. Like we would get heat sick, literally like heat sick for weeks. I'm so glad I don't work there anymore, you guys. Like this is the first summer in years where I haven't had to work in a warehouse with no air conditioning. I'm so happy.
But anyway, so and of course, you've heard Mike already, so no need for introductions there.
Yeah.
He has... All right.
I was about to say, because you always ask me what I've been up to. If you've been following my social medias at Birdman Dodd, I've been living in Japan for about the past week and a half. I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima on PlayStation 5, the director's cut. I think I'm in love. I abandoned Mass Effect for this because I was going through the trilogy for today's show. And I'm like, oh, man, I really love being a samurai. I think I want to watch an Akira Kurosawa movie at some point. So I love taking photos in that game. And you can pet foxes and their little friends, and they make sounds, and I love it.
Have you turned on the Kurosawa mode in that game?
Not yet. I'm going to wait for a really cinematic battle and then turn it on. I'm just kind of wandering around now.
All the battles in that game are cinematic.
Yeah, like I had one fight. I got this new ability called Heavenly Strike where you can basically one-shot guys. And I took this awesome picture as his hand is flying off. There's blood everywhere. But it looks so fucking awesome. Like I could make a movie out of this. And you can record clips. You can change all this thing with the photo mode. It is so incredible. I wish more games had this to this depth. And I'll say this before I stop talking. This game now means Ubisoft will never make an Assassin's Creed in Japan because it will get compared to this and it will lose every time. This game is phenomenal. Probably my game of the year so far, honestly.
All right. Well, we got a pretty easy show for you guys tonight. Tonight we are going to be selling. We're going to be selling each other on a fandom. We're basically going to be picking a franchise, movie, video game, TV show, whatever, and making a sales pitch to each other on it, and see if we can introduce each other to some new things. But of course, there is procedure to follow, and today procedure always. Let me try that again. But, of course, there is procedure to follow, so we're going to begin, as always, with Ask a Geek. And we got some questions here. First question here comes from Ori, and it is addressed to me. And his question is, what do I think about the recent expose on Wata Games and game grading? So, for those of you who don't know what he's referring to, I guess, Ori's kind of a weird name there. Basically, this YouTuber, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he did this like 45-minute long expose on this company called Wata Games that has been grading video games and selling them for huge, obscene amounts of money. So, you know that story a few months ago about the copy of Super Mario 64 that sold for like, what, $2 million? You guys remember that?
Yep.
Well, Wata Games is the company that graded that. And this guy did like some serious, like, deep dive investigative journalism and found that, like, the person who the person who sold that game was like the co-director of the company, and that one of their founders, Jim Halperin, had been involved in a pump and dump scheme in the 90s involving comic books and coins, And basically exposed all this really just like hinky, shady shit with all of this. And it can put the fear of God in you if you're really invested in, like, you know, the game collecting bubble, as some people are calling it. It's got some people afraid that, like, the bubble's going to burst, the entire market is going to fall out, which I don't think is what's going to happen. I think what's going to happen is the graded game market is going to fall out. Which I hope it does, because grading games is just fucking stupid. But I think the hobby as a whole is going to be fine. But, like, you know, the game grading is something that's seriously irritated me for a while now, because what's happening is, you know, you're seeing a bunch of people buying up all these games to, you know, ship them off and get them graded so they can turn around and sell them for just obscene amounts of money. And the grading is really inconsistent. The guy talked about in his video, this example is a copy of Tomb Raider for the Sega Saturn that was graded at, like, you know, mint condition, when, like, the plastic wrap is torn in, like, several places and there's cracks showing in the case. You know, not mint condition whatsoever. But it was a really enlightening watch. And like I said, I'm really hoping that, you know, the graded game bubble bursts soon, because, like, it's just, you know, it's kind of like the NFT thing that happened a couple months ago. It's just, you know, it's speculators speculating, and, you know, it's never sustainable, and it just winds up causing problems for everybody in the long run. So, yeah, that's that. Let's see here now. Okay. Alrighty. Let's see. I had a question here for you, Mike. What did I do with it? Oh, here we go. All right. Here's a question for you, Mike, but I'm going to open it up to Kat as well. And this question comes from Lance, and he asks, if you could meet one movie actor, living or dead, who would it be? Oh,
man. Actor? It has to be an actor. Okay, simple answer for this one, because the anniversary of his passing was just recently. I would love to spend an afternoon with Robin Williams. I watched the tribute on Joe Blow video a couple of days, about 2 weeks ago, and it talked about his life and his career and his ups and his downs. And I remember very much being inspired by Robin Williams live at the Met when I first heard it in grade 8 in the mid 90s. And I really got inspired by that. Then I saw him in Good Morning Vietnam at one point, and I've just kind of followed his career over the years. He's always that feel-good comedian, and I've always found his stand-up to be remarkably funny. But then he'll do a serious role, like 1 Hour Photo. He also did a really good guest spot. I think it was on Law and Order SVU at one point. And he did a movie in 2009, and I think it was called World's Best Dad, and it involved his son committing suicide and how he dealt with the outcome of that. And it's got some funny moments in it, but it really hit me in a way I really can't describe. And when he passed away a couple of years ago, it profoundly affected me, because I realized just how much laughter that man brought into the world through his characters, his improv work, and he would always make time for children. He would always do everything that he could. He was very involved in a number of different community efforts. And he named his daughter after The Legend of Zelda. He was a nerd. He was one of us. He loved Evangelion, which is my favorite anime of all time. And there's actually references to that in some of his movies and shows. So yeah, if I had to pick one person, Robin Williams. If somebody was alive, I would like to sit down with Chris Evans, Captain America himself. He looks like a fun guy, and he might have some really funny stories. And I wouldn't ask him about anything MCU. I just want to have a day with Chris Evans at like a park and just talk. I think that might be really fun.
Okay. Kat, what about you? If you could meet any actor, living or dead, who would it be?
This is going to be a really obscure for y'all maybe, but there's an actor named Rahul Kohli He was on The Haunting of Bly Manor and iZombie, and he's in that really raunchy Harley Quinn cartoon that is really good. And I follow him on Twitter, and he fucking kills me because he's this, very handsome British. So he comes off as, being very, very prim and proper. And then he takes pictures of the Gundam kits that he's currently painting. And then I'm like, dude, I think I could get along with this guy, or at least have a conversation with him that could be really fun. And I'm like, man, and he's like the same age as me. And I'm like, if I could book this guy at a convention or go meet him at a convention, I could actually be really happy with that. Like, he's so interesting, and he knows how people view him, and like he just like rips on people on Twitter, and it's really, really entertaining. And I really, really enjoy following him so much. Plus everything that he's in, I've really, really enjoyed. So, especially in Bly Manor. If you haven't seen The Haunting of Bly Manor, it's really, his character is phenomenal. So I'd meet him, but I'm trying to think of a dead actor I'd want to meet, and I'm just like, no, there's some dead writers I'd want to have some words with. But I think also on the topic of Mike would want to meet Chris Evans, I think I would want to meet The Rock. Like,
yeah, he seems like he'd be a fun guy.
Right? Like, I'd want to hang out with The Rock on one of his cheat days. When he eats, like, 19 pizzas or whatever he does on cheat days, where, like, I would just want to see it happen.
Like, eating 19 pizzas.
I'm not gonna eat all of the same food as him on his cheat days, but I just want to watch The Rock, like a living god like The Rock, just exist while consuming as many calories as he does on his cheat days. I need to see that in person to believe that it's real.
So you want to see The Rock's mukbang? That's hilarious.
Like, he takes pictures and puts them on Instagram, and it is wild. He is famous for what he does in his cheat days because of, what he looks like, what he do. He spends so much time at the gym and eating right and exercising and doing all this stuff, and then on cheat days he eats like 20 pancakes and like 11 pizzas and stuff, and he just goes wild. And I feel like if I saw this happen, I would truly believe that he had descended from Mount Olympus and that he was actually Dionysus or something like that.
Okay, all right. How do I follow that?
You gotta be creative.
All right. Actually, well, if I could meet any actor, living or dead, the first one I would want to meet, and this is probably not necessarily going to show my age, but show how old the stuff I'm into is. But I would want to meet Groucho Marx, because his style of humor really, informed. It really informed my sense of humor and my personality. And I think it'd be fun to just like the thing about Groucho is like he was always on. The persona that you saw on screen, that was just him. Like, he was always on. He was always throwing out quips and one-liners, and like I would love to just like sit down with him over a cup of tea and just like have a snark off. I think that would just be a lot of fun. Living actor, oh geez. That's a tough one, because like a lot of the actors that I really like, they aren't really doing much of anything anymore. You know what? No, I take that back. There's one living actor that I would love to meet, and that would be Mark Hamill. I would love to just sit down and just like have a chat with Mark and just talk about his career, his time as Luke Skywalker and as the Joker, and just like I follow him on Twitter, and like dude is hysterical, and just like he seems like the kind of guy that you can just like have a beer with and just jaw for hours with, and like I'd really love to meet him face to face. And hearing this is probably going to make my brother laugh, because he has met Mark Hamill, and he's very quick to remind me of that fact. So yeah, that'd be the two actors that I'd love to meet: Groucho Marx and Mark Hamill. Okay, and let's see here now. Okay, and actually, speaking of spooky season, Here's a question here from Eric, and his question is, what is our dream Halloween costume? Which I think we've answered a similar question before, but you know what? It's always fun to dig into the hypotheticals and what ifs. So, Kat, let's start with you. Your dream Halloween costume.
Oh, you know what it is because we've answered this question or dream cosplay before. It's Xena, baby. I want to be Xena so badly. I want to be that warrior princess so much. And you know what? Many years ago, I had somebody who offered to take up a commission to make the armor, and like this dude lived so far away, and it was like I didn't know how I would get this guy money and how I would get everything, and it was many moons ago, and now it's like I don't know if I have the kind of time it would take to make the costume, or I'd have to commission somebody definitely at this point, but I would still love to be Xena so much. The only thing that I have really hung up about Xena is having a wig with bangs and making it look good on my giant ass forehead. But other than that, I still want to be Xena.
Okay, Mike, what about you? Dream Halloween costume?
Well, let's presume I'm going with my current body, so crippled one-legged guy. But if I could go to, let's say I could go to the world of make-believe where I'm in perfect physical shape and I can walk again, I would love to do something out of Mass Effect. I've been looking at the designs for some of the armor in that game, and I'm just thinking it would be so cool because one of my friends is Mark Meir, who plays Commander Shepard. He's the male Shep, and he had a set of N7 armor commissioned for him at Dragon Con, and it looked incredible. And it would just feel so badass to have that armor on, have the Omni Blade, like a M8 Avenger assault rifle, and the N7 kind of breather helmet on. I literally could feel like I could take on the Reapers by myself with that getup. That would be so cool. However, a dream costume, it would require a lot of special effects work. But I've talked about this for years, but I don't think I've talked about it on this podcast. I would be a trooper from ODST, so from Halo, but I'm infected by the Flood, and I would love to have Flood spores coming out of a shattered helmet. I think that would be awesome, and I want it to be gross as possible. So from heroic and saving the galaxy to stuff of nightmares, if I had to pick.
Okay. For me, dream Halloween costume, a Darth Vader costume that actually looks good. Because I've seen a lot of Darth Vader costumes in my time, and just, there's always something that, winds up ruining the whole thing for me. Like, the helmet is cheap, or the electronics on the chest box are all wonky and out of whack. I don't know. There's just always something about a Darth Vader costume that just looks wrong to me. But I would love to one year wear a screen accurate Darth Vader Halloween costume. The one problem with that is I have a very high body temperature on a good day, and I know that I would probably cook myself alive in that goddamn helmet. So I would need some kind of like internal air conditioning system put in. Like, I don't know, something that just like, just pumps cooled water around my body to keep me chilled. So don't fucking like pass out from heating without having to lose 3 of my limbs in a Jedi lightsaber duel first.
Yeah, some of those Darth Vader costumes are really impressive. I used to know a guy who did Vader for the 501st Legion here in Ontario, and his costume was pretty good, but those things are not cheap. And you're not kidding when it comes to helmets. To get a screen accurate one and one that fits properly, you're looking at some serious change, and there's so many different variants.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want the A New Hope? Do you want the Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, blah 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 blah? And there are subtle differences in each.
Well, I've told this story before, but back in 2015 when my sister paid to take us all to Disney World, this is just after they'd added like the Star Wars area to the Disney Studios park. And you walk into the gift shop in that section of the park, and like right as you walk in, there front and center of the store is a display with a $600 screen accurate Darth Vader helmet. And I went into that, that gift shop like 4 or 5 times. And every time I would see that helmet, I'd just like, oh, Jesus, take the wheel, save me from myself. I need to eat. So yeah, but like I said, I've seen some impressive costumes, but like I said, there's always just like that one thing, that one little detail that they get wrong. That, like, once I see it, I can't unsee it, and it just sours the whole thing for me. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me being overly being too much of a stickler for detail. Anyway, but that is all the Ask the Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you, as always, for sending them in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com. Love getting your questions. Love reading them on the air. So get your questions in, and you just might get yours read on the show. All right, and with that, we're going to jump right into the meat and potatoes of this show. And, we all come from different walks of the geek life. There's we tend to have a lot of the same interests, based on what we cover on the show, but we also have some stuff that we might be into that maybe other people might not be aware of. So for this episode, we're basically going to sell each other on stuff that we're fans of. So Mike, since you proposed this topic, why don't you go first?
Right, folks, well, gather round as I, your reporter, Mike the Birdman, sit in for the Alliance News Network. And you might be wondering, where am I broadcasting from? I'm broadcasting from the Citadel in Council Space. What am I talking about? The BioWare series of Mass Effect, covering games from Mass Effect 1, 2, 3, and Andromeda, but also the mobile games, the comic books, the action figures, the props, everything. I want to sell you guys on this. So, for those that aren't necessarily familiar, Mass Effect was a series that was exclusive to the Xbox for a couple of years, and then it got released on the PlayStation 3 and has been released in its newest form, in the form of the Mass Effect Legendary Edition trilogy for all modern consoles except for the Switch, whatever. So the story of Mass Effect, it's a simple enough one: save the galaxy, but from what? You play as a male or female character known as Commander Shepard, John or Jane Shepard, but you can choose your name. My personal Shepard has always been Michelle Shepard or John Shepard, but I almost exclusively play as Fem Shep, but I'm getting away from that. So the story begins as you are on an Alliance military vessel that is being inspected by the Council. You may be wondering, well, who the hell are these people? These people are a collection of alien species that have welcomed us to the galactic community because we have discovered something on Mars. And we discovered something known as Mass Effect technology from a Prothean data cache. Well, what the hell is that? The Protheans used to be the most expansive species in the galaxy. And then suddenly, 50,000 years, they just disappeared. They're all gone. All they're left are some relics, some stuff that works here and there, but nobody knows why. So eventually, at some point, we find out we have what's known as a mass relay hanging out near Pluto. It's actually one of the moons of Pluto, Charon. So the Mass Effect relay is broken up. We now discover there's this huge galactic civilization out there. And we start meeting people like the Turians, the Solarians, the Asari, the Volus, the Hanar, all these different species out there. And at first it doesn't go well, but eventually we start talking, we get accepted, we fight a brief war with some of these aliens, but eventually things get along. So we go to this planet known as Eden Prime on this shakedown cruise to test out this new ship, the Normandy. And hilarity ensues. It turns out there's this rogue Spectre, and a Spectre is a guy who works for the Council, but he's basically like James Bond. They can do what they want. They answer only to the Council, and they have a license to kill. They're pretty much ninjas, assassins, super soldiers, whatever. And humanity doesn't have one, but we go there to show this. There's a Spectre on board the Normandy, and we want to prove to the Council, hey, we're just as capable as you. There's no human Spectres. What do you think of Commander Shepard? But things go sideways when we discover Eden Prime has been attacked by this gigantic ship, and we think it's another species of alien. It turns out we think it's a machine race known as the Geth, which were created by another race of people known as the Quarians. And we soon find out that that giant ship that attacked Eden Prime is not a Geth ship. It is not anything we've ever seen before. So Commander Shepard touches this thing known as a Prothean beacon, and he gets visions, and he starts seeing the end of the galactic cycle. These things known as the Reapers are coming, and they come every 50,000 years and cleanse the galaxy. Well, in their words, harvest the galaxy every 50,000 years. And that's why when a civilization reaches an apex of technology, for example, developing Mass Effect technology, the Reapers come every 50,000 years, clean house, and then the cycle repeats. And this has been happening for untold millennia, if not millions or trillions of years. So it's up to you and your friends to stop these guys, but the council doesn't believe you. But they say, you know what? We're going to grant you status. Become a Spectre. Prove to us that one of our own went nuts and is helping this thing known as the Reapers or whatever. We don't believe you, but hey, if you can prove it, sure. And that's the first game. There's a lot I'm leaving out because the story is where things kind of pick up. And as the series goes on, you meet more and more aliens. But the thing that attracted me to Mass Effect, it's the people. It's the relationship. The setting is great. It's science fiction with enough reality, but also with enough fantastic elements that I'm like, okay, it's not Star Wars. It's not Star Trek. It's somewhere in between with high tech, but fantasy elements too. But it's the people. You as Commander Shepard can romance certain members of your crew. You can become their best friend, or you can just be something in between, and you can choose how you want to do this. Do you want to be a paragon of justice and be a good person, or do you want to be a renegade and become ruthless and do things no matter the cost, no matter what lives it costs in the meantime? And both playstyles are completely valid. And both playstyles come with consequence. That's something I've never encountered in a game before. My choices mattered. Do I save this person? But if I kill them, then their buddies won't come after me later, sort of thing. So there's all these branching paths and decisions that a decision you make in Mass Effect 1 can come back to haunt you in Mass Effect 3. That really had my attention, especially in Mass Effect 2, when you could import your saved character from Mass Effect 1, so all your decisions carry over. And a number of other surprises as well as you go forward. So, as the series went on, I started to look at some of these things, and relationships got me. I'm like, okay, this is cool. What else is there? And then I find out there's comic books, and I'm thinking, okay. And some of these comic books deal with some of the events from the show, or from the games, talking about how Commander Shepard's body was retrieved, and I'm not going to tell you what the context of that is because that's the plot of Mass Effect 2 and probably the best in the series. But there's also other fun things from this fandom, such as an amazing set of toys from McFarlane. There's been an amazing set of PlayArts Kai figures from Square Enix that came out a number of years ago. Really regretting the fact that I sold those now, by the way. And the main reason I want to sell more people on this fandom, because the games are fantastic. Even Andromeda, which is a game I famously didn't like a number of years ago, I may have to give another playthrough to, just to see if it's as bad as I remember. Because I see a lot of discourse on Twitter talking about it, so maybe I'm remembering it wrong. But if you have an interest in science, if you have an interest in compelling stories and really good performances, then Mass Effect is where I think you should go. There is one character in it. His name is Thane. And he gives a very famous speech in Mass Effect 3. And I have never been moved like that in a video game. And I'm not going to give the context, but it's a goodbye. And it's something I wish I'd taken some lines out of for my wedding, because that's how powerful parts of it were. And it's just a universe where when I think of a happy couple, I think of Fem Shep and Garrus Vicarian, who is a Turian cop you work with over the course of the series. And there's one line towards the end of Mass Effect 3 where they say, there is no shepherd without a carrion. And they think it's going to be the end of the world. Like, the world is literally coming to an end. The universe could end today. And they love each other. And I think I learned a lot about love relationships. I've been in a number up to that point. I've even been engaged several times before I met my current wife. But seeing this relationship play out kind of gave me a different perspective on things. And that's sort of been my shtick, is I look in how things make me feel emotionally, how I look at things philosophically, because that's another thing about Mass Effect I want to sell you guys on. It asks questions. For example, those Geth that I mentioned, they are artificial creatures. And at one point, one of these creatures, a Geth machine, asks its creator, Aquarian, does this unit have a soul? And because we live in an era right now where we are developing artificial intelligence, we're developing quantum computing, we're developing all this wonderful technology, is that not a question at some point we may have to answer? Will a machine ever ask us, what am I? What is my purpose? And I love that idea. And the Quarians in the story, they freaked out and tried to kill every single Quarian, and the Quarians now wander through space, kicked off of their home planet, sent into exile. So much so, they have to live inside biomechanical suits that keep them alive, because literally a common cold could kill them. A suit rupture is probably going to be fatal unless you bathe in antibiotics. And that's something I've never seen sci-fi do, is make species truly vulnerable. And if you read some of the entries on the codex for some of the planets you explore, you learn unique things about hot Jupiters, ice giants, brown dwarves, other spatial phenomena that we're only really starting to learn about now. But they give you such a rich history and lore that you can spend hours just reading codex entries or listening to them talk about the technology that exists in this world. And I don't know, there's just something, I haven't had a fandom or a franchise or any IP capture my imagination like this since Star Wars when I was a child. I love this franchise so much that I have an N7 logo on my right arm. One of my friends also has it, and we call ourselves squad mates for life. And through a series of happenstance and just right place, right time, I'm friends with Commander Shepard in real life. I've hosted one of his panels at a convention before. So I don't know, maybe that's why I'm so attached to it. I want more people to experience this story, and there's so many different permutations. Your playthrough may not be the same as mine. And that's where the fun is, finding your own adventure, your own path. And everybody wonders who's your space waifu. And I want people to find out and tell me. Did you go after Tali? Did you go after Garrus? Did you go after Thane? Did you go after Jacob or Miranda? Whoever. There's love story, there's tragedy. You could cheat on your partners if you want, and they will catch you. And that'll come back to bite you in the ass. There's so much possibility, and that's what I love about Mass Effect. So, what do you guys think?
Well, I'm already a Mass Effect fan, so I guess I'm going to cede the floor to Kat on this one.
So, like, is there gameplay involved? Like, how hard is it to learn this game? Because you know me, I can't game to save my life. So if you were to sell me personally on this, is this a game that is easily accessible to a dummy like me who literally can barely hold a controller?
If you play the game on easy, yeah, sure. I mean, you don't have to be. I mean, the default class is a soldier and literally just shoot at stuff. You don't have to use special powers or tech abilities. That does help, does create more of an immersion. But if you don't have to, use the good old strategy, shoot it in the head. There's no hard puzzles to solve. There's a couple of mini games here and there, but it's pretty much a lot of straightforward stuff. A lot of the gameplay is decision making. Just, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And some of the missions do get a little hairy at times, but there's nothing, I would say, super complicated. It's a very good RPG for people who want that RPG action adventure. without having to commit to Final Fantasy's level of inventory management and grinding versus an action adventure game like, say, I don't know, Uncharted, but there's no jumping puzzles here or stuff like that.
And aesthetically, what does this look like? Actually, I know what Mass Effect looks like because I used to work at a place that sold video games. But to a listener, what might it look like? Sell me on the aesthetics.
I would call it a mix between Star Wars and Star Trek. And what I mean by that is it's futuristic yet realistic in terms of its portrayal. I would almost call it, because there's a lot of hologrammy stuff, which is like your tech tool, your Omni tool, stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of Jarvis from the MCU with that kind of hologram stuff. But it's a very clean future, kind of like Star Trek, but Star Wars in terms of scope and adventure. Some of the character designs are really cool. In fact, there's a species known as the Hanar, which are walking, talking jellyfish that communicate via voice and bioluminescence. So if you want to see something really weird, then you're going to see it here. There's also a species known as the Volus, who live inside environment suits and are little squat fat guys that are usually really funny. And you learn some interesting words, like they call us Earth Clan, stuff like that. So aesthetically, it's very strange in that regard. It's like a melting pot of galactic society, and you really buy into it really quick. I would say the immersion, because when you start out the game as a human shepherd and you haven't got a chance to meet all the aliens, when you get to the Citadel and start talking to people doing missions, it doesn't take much to get involved in the Mass Effect world. Before then, you'll be like, oh, that's the Turian world of Palaven. We're going to go back to a Solarian colony or stuff like that. Like, you'll pick this stuff up so fast.
Cool. That's all the questions I had.
Okay. All right, well, and I guess I'm up next, and this was actually a really tough topic for me to come up with something to talk about, because I basically knew that I was going to be pitching to Kat, because, Mike, you and I, we have very similar tastes in media, and a lot of times the stuff that we have in common, there's actually one of us that put the other on the scent.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So I pretty much knew that I was going to be pitching to Kat. And the problem with that is that outside of the stuff that we cover on the show, you know, there's not a whole lot of overlap between our two interests. So it's like, okay, you know, it's kind of like you know, going into uncharted territory. You know, what do I need to prepare to do this? So this was one I really had to rack my brain on. But then I remembered that there is actually a franchise that Kat is actually some that I know for a fact that she's somewhat familiar with, and so that gave me a good leaping ground. So and that franchise is Fire Emblem, because I know that I don't know if you still do, Kat, but I know at one point you played Fire Emblem Heroes, the mobile game.
Yeah, I was playing that for a long time. Mostly, you know, it's a gacha game, so it doesn't really take too much skill, but I would literally, guys, this is really embarrassing, but I was trying to get, like, my favorite voice actors' characters. Like, if somebody that I'd worked with in the past, I was like, oh, Chris Bevins. Chris Bevins now has a character, I have to go get that. Oh, Damon Mills has got a character now, I have to go get that guy.
So yeah, so that gave me a leaping off point, because kind of coincidentally, I've been kind of on a Fire Emblem kick myself. So for my pitch, Kat, I am going to try and sell you on the main series Fire Emblem games. So there's not really a whole lot of story to really go into, mostly because not a lot of the games take place in the same worlds. Each game kind of takes place in its own unique universe. There are some that are distant sequels to previous games, but for the most part, each game is standalone. And Fire Emblem is basically a turn-based strategy RPG. Your characters basically form a small army that you move across a grid-based map. Excuse me. Mm. I don't know why, but I just like got like this ball of phlegm in the back of my throat that I just can't seem to dislodge.
Charming.
Sorry, didn't mean for that to get disgusting. But anyway,
Lovely.
it's a turn-based strategy RPG, and one of the things I like about it is the fact that it is turn-based. So it's not like StarCraft or Warcraft where you have to react, at lightning speeds. You can actually take your time and plan out your moves. So like, okay, if I move this character here and attack that guy, I could probably kill him, but then I'd be left open to, his archers over here that I can't get at just yet. And each character has their own different class and abilities that you can develop or upgrade, usually as you see fit. Some games are kind of locked in on their progression path. But one of the things that is kind of unique about Fire Emblem is that death is permanent. If a unit falls in battle, it is lost for good. So you really have to think hard about your strategies and what you want to do, because you might wind up, this unit that you have here, he may be an uber badass that can take on just about anything one by one, but if you put him into a position where he gets attacked 4 times on the enemy's turn, he's not going to last long. So you've really got to plot out your moves very carefully. Now, I know that is kind of an eyebrow raiser for some people. So later games in the series, starting with Awakening on the 3DS, they introduced a casual mode which turns off permadeath. And the newest game in the series, Three Houses, actually has a mechanic where you can actually rewind time in a battle and rewind back to before you made a move or your enemy made a move, and try a different strategy if what you did turned out not to work in your favor. So that makes it a little more accessible to people like me who haven't played the older games and might get a little frustrated with the fact that you have to restart a battle every single time you lose a unit. And so it makes things a little more accessible and a little less frustrating. There are some really great stories in the Fire Emblem franchise, and one of the things that I really like about it is it was something that was started in it wasn't the series from the start. I can't remember what game actually introduced it, but the later games have this relationship mechanic called the support system, where as your characters fight beside each other, they build up support points, and you'll get these cutscenes that you can watch of these characters interacting with and talking with each other. And you learn very quickly that each of these characters have like really deep backstories that you'll learn bits and pieces of, as you see these characters interact with each other. There's very little of like info dumps where a character will sit down like, here's my entire backstory, all in one go. No, it's things you've got to piece together. So, a character might mention, say, for example, that they grew up in kind of a bad family situation with one character. It's like, okay, that's kind of interesting. But then in another conversation with a different person, that character may reveal exactly what the nature of that issue was. Like, maybe they were in an arranged marriage that they didn't want to go through with, or maybe they were persecuted because they didn't have magical abilities that that their parents wanted them to have. And these characters all have these deep backstories. And because of how this support system works, no two playthroughs or stories are exactly the same. And I would say probably the game that really does the most with this is actually the most recent game to come out, Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I would describe as Harry Potter meets Game of Thrones. So in that game, you basically play the professor of this officers academy, and at the start of the game, you choose one of the game's 3 student houses to lead, and which house you choose wildly affects how the story plays out. There's actually there's a different campaign for each house, plus a fourth story that you can unlock if you make the right choices. And it's really it was the first Fire Emblem game I played, and it was my game of the year because, like, as you wind up spending time with your students and getting to know them, not just in your house but in the other houses, you really get to know them, and it becomes like really heartbreaking later in the game after the time script when war breaks out, and you wind up having to face some of these students on the battlefield. So it's really heartbreaking to wind up really bonding with a student in the first third of the game, and then after the war breaks out, having to basically put them to the sword on the battlefield later in the game. It's like if things it really kind of just makes you ask that question, like what if things had gone differently. And it gives you this mechanic where on repeat playthroughs you can actually recruit students from the other houses into your house. So I'm on my second playthrough now, and I'm going through I'm basically going through trying to recruit as many of the students from the house of my first playthrough into my new house, because no, I love you so much, I don't want to kill you, come join me in my new house. And it's a really, the stories tend to be just really fascinating to get into. And another thing that I know that you'll enjoy, because I've seen you mention this on Twitter, is the character designs.
Yes.
The character designs in the Fire Emblem series are like just some of the wildest and most creative I've ever seen. And I think that would be a big selling point to you. Because like I said, I've seen you mention that you love the character designs. So yeah, that's my elevator pitch. So, Kat, questions, or Mike, if you have ones too.
Well, the fact that you mentioned there is a casual mode has increased my desire to play this 1,000-fold. I actually got this game. I got 3 houses last year when it was on sale for like $30 on your recommendation. But I'd always thought, oh, there's permadeath. Fuck that. But now that I know there's an easy mode, because you know what? If you play a game on easy mode, you're still playing it. Fight me. It sounds a lot more fun. The fact that your decisions like that matter. And like you said, you can become attached to these people and you may have to kill them, perhaps. Now you've got my attention. Ooh, betrayal. I'm in.
All right, Kat.
I do like really enjoy the character designs, and I actually like how a lot of it, because I have watched my roommate play a considerable amount of 3 houses. Like I've just like looked over her shoulder and she'll fill me in on what's going on in the story. So I do enjoy a lot of the stuff with the character designs are all really interesting. Some of them I don't care for too much, but most of them are like pretty good. I really like the way that the games are that you have so many story options out of the games, like pick your house, here we go. I do like that, all of that stuff. I do like the way it's kind of almost like a visual novel at points where you're going through like dialogue and stuff. Because to me, that seems more accessible for a doofus like me, who doesn't really know anything about gaming. Tell me about what platforms it's available on, because that would also be a selling point for me, who only owns a PS4.
Well, it is a Nintendo property, so
exactly.
it's only going to be on Nintendo platforms. I would say probably the most accessible is Fire Emblem 3 Houses, which is on the Nintendo Switch. And I'm going to stick to ones that you can get through digital download, because because a lot of these games tend to be really hard to find on the secondary market. So if assuming that you wind up playing on your roommate's Switch or deciding to get a Nintendo console of your own, 3 Houses is the one that I would recommend you start with. Excuse me. After that, Fire Emblem Awakening on the Nintendo 3DS, again, available for digital download. That's the one I'm playing through now, and that was the one that really kind of blew the lid off for the American fan base and really got a lot of people into the franchise. So Fire Emblem actually has kind of a rather interesting history in the West. It's been around in Japan since like the 1980s. but it just never Nintendo never thought to bring it to the US or to English speaking countries. And it wasn't until Super Smash Bros. Melee was released on the GameCube, and 2 of the unlockable fighters were Fire Emblem characters, Marth and Roy, that we got our first taste of the franchise. And people were, players in the US were like, Marth, Roy, who the hell are these characters? What's Fire Emblem? And that got people kind of interested in the franchise, and so Nintendo kind of started experimenting with releasing Fire Emblem games in the West. But it really wasn't until Awakening on the 3DS that the series really blew up. But it's got a really fascinating. It's got a really great story involving time travel and excuse me. And it's multi-generational epics. The characters in the second half of the game are the children of your characters from the first half of the game. So I'd say after Three Houses, try Awakening if you want something that's if you want to go in after that. There's also the Fates duology, Birthright and Conquest, also on the 3DS, and those are really interesting because they both tell the same story, but from different sides of the conflict. So depending on which game you play, you're actually picking which side of the war you're going to be on. And there's actually a DLC for both of them that winds up unlocking this third campaign, which basically ties everything together in the end. Depending on your time commitment, that might be a little outside of the wheelhouse, but I would say definitely Three Houses and Awakening are the two that I would suggest trying out if you wanted to dip your toes into the series.
One of the selling points of Three Houses that you did not mention that would 100% appeal to me or people who have my brain is the voice cast, because this voice cast, okay, so a lot of video games, they have like staple video game actors in them, or they might have some like more Hollywoody actors in them to really sell the game. But Three Houses is so freaking anime that it's like all anime voice actors. So it's Veronica Taylor, you've got Robbie Damon, you've got Zach Aguilar, Ben Diskin. Like, this cast is so many anime actors, and you could just sit there and go, oh, Erica Mendez, she was in this and this and this, and then you'd spend like 3 days just going through the cast. Like, you wouldn't be able to get through 5 minutes of gameplay because you'd be stopping and going, oh, I know this voice. Who is this? And then you'd have to, like, Google all these actors.
Well, I mean, I didn't make that pitch because, unlike you, I'm not as intimately familiar with the voice acting industry as you are, so...
It's just one of those things where when I'm playing the Fire Emblem mobile game, which I haven't played in a long time, but it is one of those things where it's like, oh, this is this actor, and I know that actor, so I want to collect all their characters, and it's almost like a weird way of like Pokemoning this. Like, I gotta catch all of Taliesin Jaffe's characters, like that kind of thing. So it's this voice cast in particular is so anime, and the storyline is kind of anime, so it's very like, if you like anime, this could be something that you could enjoy. I'm helping your pitch.
which I'm pretty sure is a sign I sold you on it. Okay, all right. Any other questions, comments?
I don't have anything. I know a lot about this already.
How long does it take to beat these games on average? Because my time is usually considerably valuable. Do I have to grind a shit ton to get the most out of it?
Depending on your difficulty, my first playthrough, Three Houses, and I'm talking like just the first playthrough on the first house that I chose was about 70 hours.
Okay, so that's not too bad.
And when you could now when you consider that there are four different stories that you can play through in Three Houses, that adds up pretty fast. So there's definitely a lot of replay that you definitely get a lot of replay value out of Three Houses. Awakening, I'm about maybe, that's on a handheld, which tend to be a little shorter. I'm about 9 hours in, and I'm on chapter 13. But Awakening also doesn't have as all the story and exploration segments that Three Houses has. Three Houses is actually really unusual for the Fire Emblem series in how much time you spend not in battle. Most of the other series, it's basically you fight a battle, and then you look at the you get the support conversation, you get the cutscenes, the support conversations in between, and then you go into another fight. So Three Houses is actually really unusual for the series in that it has the exploration of the monastery and the university, and deciding what skills you want to teach your students or learn yourself. Hello, is this thing on?
Yep.
Yeah. Like I said, it sounds interesting. I'm more inclined to play it now that I know there's an easy mode. It's not all permadeath. The fact that you are getting 4 separate stories. Well, I'm always on the lookout for new experiences on the Switch because it's my least favorite system right now. But this, I don't know, this has kind of turned me on to that. So maybe I'll play this over my Christmas break. You've definitely got my attention.
Okay. Kat, what about you?
Well, you know I don't own a Switch. I would consider if I had an abundance of free time, which I do not have right now. But like, yeah, maybe over the next holiday break I have, I might if I can wrest my roommate's Switch away from her for a little while, I might be able to get a few hours in. If nothing else, I actually really love when she just tells me what's happening in the story. Like, we'd sit on the couch and I'd be, watching something and she'd be like, oh, this is happening. And I'd be like, oh, cool.
Okay. So, yeah, that's my pitch. So, Kat, your turn.
Okay. So, I'm sure you all think that I'm going to sell you on an anime, but I'm not. I have been doing nothing for like the last year but listening to podcasts, and I am going to sell you on a podcast. This is one that I have listened to quite a lot, that I have talked about on this show before, and it is the Magnus Archives. This is a podcast that is in what I am going to call the tape recorder genre of podcasting, where the premise of the podcast is that the characters, it's an audio drama, first off. It's an audio drama where the characters are using tape recorders to document what's going on in their lives for whatever reason. It's not super, super relevant, but it's just becoming increasingly common, and I thought I'd mention it. So it is an audio drama, it is a horror, and I don't really enjoy horror that much, so the fact that I, right now, am going to try and sell you on a horror podcast should be very telling. The premise for the first season is that there is a man named Jonathan Sims, and he is the head archivist of a place called the Magnus Institute, which it basically researches the paranormal and the supernatural, and he has just been hired to run the archives after the previous head archivist. Bad things to the previous head archivist. And Jonathan Sims, does not believe in spooky supernatural things. And it is his job to take the statements that people have sent in to the Institute and put them onto a computer. But for some reason, there's a bunch of statements that can't be digitized. So instead of putting them on his computer, he records them to tape so that he can file them away and never look at them again. So the start of the series is him reading these statements that people have submitted to the Institute. And they come from all different types of people. They come from all different walks of life and different decades, because this is an archive that has been thrown into complete disarray for like 30 years. So they have all of these statements that are out of place and all over the place. So he's like reading statements from the 50s and then like a couple of years ago, and then from all these different places. And as the series progresses, you start to see the themes of these statements, where you're like, okay, wait a minute, we had a spider-themed one, and now here's another spider-themed one. And here's one that's got fire. And now here's these two statements, and this person who was in this statement is now also mentioned in this statement. And you start to put these pieces together that there is a wider story, even if the characters don't see them. Like from a very meta perspective, there is themes being portrayed. And eventually other characters come in, they're walking in on him doing these recordings, or occasionally somebody has to take over these recordings. And there are 5 seasons of this, and it starts, I'm Jonathan Sims, sorry, he's British, so just imagine I'm Jonathan Sims, blah, 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 blah. Very serious, very austere.
Wait,
and
Jonathan Sims, the master Jonathan Sims?
No. No, it's unfortunately the writer is named Johnny Sims. Oh. And he named the character after himself, which was something he came to regret later.
Oh, okay.
No. It's this writer who also runs a tabletop gaming company. So it starts very not quite repetitive, but very formulaic, and then there's an apocalypse. And that's the level of like what they're covering here is like from reading a statement to the end of the world. And then what comes after the end of the world. And like the early statements by like season 5 comparison are pretty tame, but they're really very scary without being like too scary. They're very creepy, and all the statements are like, I don't believe any of this, but then this happened and that could mean something. And you get the sense that he doesn't believe any of this stuff, but this stuff is definitely real in this universe. And you find out more and more about the characters, and basically all the characters work at this institute because spooky shit has happened to them. And yeah, like they're all heavily thematic. I can't talk about too much about the themes of it without getting into a lot of spoilers, but the voice cast gets really huge by the end, and it's a lot of really, really talented British podcasters are all in it. And the greatest thing about the Magnus Archives was that it was planned from start to finish. So the writer, Johnny Sims, sat down with the producer, Alex Newell, and said, here's the podcast, here's the beginning, here's how it ends. It's going to be 200 episodes. It's going to be this many seasons. Done. And then, so the big problem with a lot of podcasts and horror podcasts is that they don't plan out their ending. So it starts to like fizzle out at a certain point. And this show stays consistently either very good or gets leaps better just throughout the whole thing. And it's so refreshing to have a show where one, the horror of the ending isn't like a huge disappointment, but also like it was planned very thoroughly. So it doesn't really flag throughout it. And for me, that's such a big deal because a lot of the podcasts I enjoy have like sort of dips where like the story isn't as interesting, or it's not as good, or the characters do stuff that doesn't make sense to create drama. And this doesn't do any of that. The characters feel very real. Everything's just really well written. The other thing that I really like about it, which is huge for the fan community who enjoy it, is that there's a lot of good representation in it. There's a lot of good, like there's like gay couples, lesbian couples, there's bis, there's I'm pretty sure there's a couple of trans characters. There's characters who are not white. There are evil characters who you sympathize with. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on. And there is, like, later down the line, a very good romantic story that sort of gets slowly introduced. And it never really becomes the focus of the story. And it is exactly as complicated as it needs to be for a story that is mostly a horror that involves the end of the world. So it has such a good balance of here's horrible stuff that's going on, here's the people that it's affecting directly, and what their part to play in it is. And one of the other things that I really enjoy about it is that it does not give you this overused trope of like destiny. It's actually one of the things they deliberately talk about, that destiny doesn't really have a part to play in it, that what happens are people manipulating other people or the consequences of your own actions. So a lot of things happen and characters do bad things because they choose to, and not because they were fated to, or it's their lot in life, but because they made choices or they were manipulated into making those choices. And it asks a lot of hard questions about yourself in the course of the series. And again, it's 5 seasons. It is exactly 200 episodes. But if you think, oh, that sounds like a lot, the episodes tend to be around anywhere between like 14 to 25 minutes or so. So they're not incredibly long. They're very self-contained. The later episodes have a lot of action in them, whereas the early episodes are mostly just like recording statements and everything like that. They continue to be that way, but later episodes have a lot of like, oh, there's a fight breaking out, and we're going through this weird spooky house and that sort of thing. So it never stays stagnant, even though the idea of somebody sitting down and recording something stays the same throughout all 5 seasons. So it has a lot of variation of what's going on each season while still having these same core principles. I forgot what I was going to say next. Shit. So even though it is a lot of episodes, it's not a huge time commitment if you are already somebody who listens to a lot of podcasts. This same group, because they are a bunch of improv actors and podcasters and people who play a lot of tabletop games, they also play a lot of tabletop games together, and they'll get the cast together and they'll play some games that, like, Johnny wrote a game, so now they're going to play it, or one of the other characters who plays a villain is going to run a game for everybody. So it's really fun to have this, okay, you can listen to them doing this dark, spooky thing over here, and then listen to them goofing off and being idiots on a game of whatever stupid thing they're playing now. And it's just really, really nice contrast to sort of mellow out the spookiness. So that was me talking a lot. Do you guys have questions?
Well, I've already subscribed. You basically sold me on, this is like the X-Files, but they know what the hell they're doing. So yeah, I'm in. Plus the fact that I don't have to have a long time commitment. I come from a radio background, and producing audio dramas is not an easy thing, especially on these tight deadlines. But the fact that they knew what was going on from start to finish, they could plan their production, they could get things all ironed out. That's impressive. That sells me from a technical standpoint.
Yeah.
Like, this sounds awesome. And I don't listen to many podcasts. I know I've been podcasting for 14 years, but I don't listen to many. Actually, I've only started in the last 2 weeks, realistically.
No, it's pretty crazy, because I was the same way, where we'd been podcasting since Gonzo and I have been doing this show since 2009, and I didn't start listening to podcasts until like 2 or 3 years ago. But this show, I have listened from start to end at least 4 times.
Oh, wow.
Because I love it so much. And because the episodes are short, I can get through a lot of episodes. Like, I have the ability to listen to podcasts at work. I know not everybody does, but I can. You can also like listen to them on your commute and everything. And it's not so scary that it keeps you up at night. It's just the right amount of spook. Like, if you're not hooked by episode 3, I don't know what's wrong with you. Because, like, the first couple of episodes, you're like, ooh, ooh, ooh. Like, you're just, like, really enchanted by how just the right amount of creepy they are. From an audio standpoint, for you, Birdman, there is a noticeable audio difference between for sure season 1 and season 5, because the first season, they were recording under a bunch of blankets in someone's apartment hallway.
For those days.
Yeah, and then by later seasons they had a studio, but then the final season was actually, and the final season is a rough listen right now because it takes place during the apocalypse. So they have an entire season that takes place after the end of the world, and there are a lot of really heavy themes in there. and it was all released during the pandemic. So they had to record that entire season from people's homes, and by that point they had actors all over, not just England, but they had somebody who I think was from New Zealand and stuff like that. And they were having to, right at the start of the pandemic, when they knew everything was shutting down, the producer went out and bought like every single microphone of a certain kind of microphone in the entire country, so that they could have consistent audio quality throughout the final season. And they were literally mailing kits of everything that you needed to record this podcast to every different cast member. It is like the amount of effort that went into making the final season happen was just extraordinary.
Now that's commitment I can respect. That is fantastic.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it's really excellent. And it's safe to say, like, the writing is incredible. The author of the podcast, who is also the main character of the podcast, he wrote like every single episode. He's not even in every single episode, but he wrote all of them. And then he wrote a book afterwards that I actually just got a hold of and finished reading in like 4 days. It's so good. Gonzo, did you have anything?
Well, you bit at the beginning where you're talking about this archivist, like basically cataloging all this like paranormal stuff. It kind of piqued my interest because it reminded me of this online wiki that I like to browse every now and then called the SCP Foundation, which is basically like just cataloging all these like paranormal objects and happenings. So that's kind of piqued my interest. I guess the one thing that I would ask is, because I'm ADHD, is this something that is easy to listen to like in the background, or that you have to really pay attention to? Because like if I've just got to sit there, like I talked about this before, like when we talked about the audio, when we did audio dramas, like I was able to burn through all those Doctor Who audio dramas because like I was able to listen to them in the car while I was driving on the deliveries, and I could kind of I had some activity to do while I was listening to this. Is this something that like you really had to sit down and like focus on and pay real close attention to really get into it? Or is this something that you can listen to in the background for the first time while you're doing something else?
You can definitely be doing other things while listening to it. Like I said, I was listening to this at work. I think I've listened to it like fully 2 full times in like a month span at work. So I definitely was able to get through it while just doing my work, and I don't even think I listened to it in the car. I think the first 2 times I listened to it all the way through, I was cycle counting at work. I will say that what you will find is that you'll probably get, I'd say 15 episodes in, or maybe 17 or so episodes in, and then you'll go, no, hold on. Didn't I hear something exactly like this in another episode? And then you'll be sitting there going, no, wait a minute, what episode did they mention this character in? And that is not because of ADHD or anything like that. They're so subtle about name dropping previous characters from previous episodes or locations or stuff like that. So you're always going, now wait a minute, was this on a previous episode? It happens. It's like the first season is really, really good for like psyching you out a little bit and making you wonder what episode or did you miss something. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things you can be doing other things while listening to it. No problem. I had a period of time where I was listening to it at work, and whatever I was doing at work, there seemed to be something exactly like that happening in the podcast. There was an episode where a guy was afraid of heights, and he was afraid of being on a ladder. And I was literally on a ladder listening to this guy. And I was like, God damn it, Johnny, how do you always do this? There's a lot of episodes about spiders. And every time I listen to an episode about spiders, I find a spider. Like, it's eerie. It's damn eerie, you guys. But yeah, it's such a good show. The writing is really, really good.
Okay. All right.
Also, as a podcast that has been around for a few years, it's available pretty much on any podcatcher of your choice. So it's like, it's really easy. That's another selling point for podcasts, is that I love podcasts because you can just like download them onto your phone and listen to them wherever, versus like a movie or a TV show where you literally have to sit down and focus on it. This is like, you can take it anywhere. You can take it on the train or a bus, or listen to it in your car or whatever. So for me, it's a huge selling point. Is why I've gotten so heavily into listening to podcasts lately, is because you can take it anywhere.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions. Mike, have you got anything?
Oh, I'm going to check this out, and I will give a report on at least the first episode by the next time we record. So you can hold me to that. This, like I said, Kat, you've definitely sold me on it, because sometimes when you're wandering the countryside or saving the galaxy, scanning planets, sometimes you get a little tired of hearing launching probe launched. But I'd rather be scared while I'm doing video game busy work. So
For sure.
I'm in, man.
Yeah, I would say, like, for sure listen to like the first 3 episodes, because I think the third one is a really good, like, I was hooked after the first one, just the way it ended, but like the third one is really, really good. So give it 3 and then let me know what you think.
Okay. All right. And that is about all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you guys next time. Let us know in the comments, did we sell you on any of our fandoms here? So, or what is something that you would, that you'd like to pitch to us? So, go ahead and sign off in the comments, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you as always for tuning in. I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
I wish I was Commander Shepard.
All right, we'll see you next time. Taka, play us out.